Your secrets, if you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays, kids more worried.
Everyone's got to make a move.
You're in the mix. The DJ always playing the
A nigga never been as broke as me. I like that. When I was young, I had 2 pair of leads. Besides that, the pinstripes and the gray. The one I wore on Mondays and Wednesdays. While niggas flirt, I'm sewing tigers on my shirt and alligators. You wanna see the inside? I see you later. Here come the drama. Oh, that's that nigga with the fake. Wow, why you punch me in my face? Stay in your place, play your position. Here come my intuition. Go in this nigga pocket, rob him while his friends watch it. And hoes block it. Here comes respect. His crew's your crew, or they might be next. Look at that man, big man, they never try, so we roll with them, stole with them. I mean loyalty. Niggas bought me milks at lunch, the milks with chocolate, the cookies, butter crunch, 88, Oshkosh and blue and white ducks. That's the
sold by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. Sold by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. From the living color to movie scripts to On the 6 to J-Lo to this headline clips. I stay grounded as the amounts rolling. I'm real, I thought I told ya. I'm real, even on Oprah. That's just me. Nothing phony, don't hate on me. What you get is what you see. Oh, by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. Fooled by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from.
After realizing to master enterprise and I ain't have to be in school by 10, I then began to encounter with my counterparts on how to burn the block apart. Break it down into sections, drugs by these selections. Some use pipes, others use injections. Syringe sold separately, Frank the deputy quick to grab my Smith & Wesson like my dick was missing. To protect my position, my corner, my layer. While we out here, say the hustler's prayer. If the game shakes me or breaks me, I hope it makes me a better man. Take a better stand, put money in my mom's hand. Get my daughter this college plan, so she don't need no man. Stay far from timid, only make moves when your heart's in it. And live the phrase, sky's the limit. Motherfucker.
By the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. Fooled by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from. I'm down to earth like Chris, rocking this business. I've grown up so much. I'm married now and loving it. Rumors got me laughing, kid. I love my life and my public. Put God first and can't forget to stay real. To me, it's like breathing. Don't be fooled by the rocks that I got. Breathing. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. Don't be fooled by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from.
On the grill of my lowrider, guns on both sides, right above the gold wires. I 4-5 them, kill a nigga on my song and really do it. That's the true meaning of a ghost rider. 10 G's to take your daughter out of Air Forces. Believe you me, homie, I know all about losses. I'm from Compton where the wrong colors be cautious. One phone call, I had your body dumped in Marcy. I stay strapped like Carsey's. Been banging since my little nigga Rob got killed for his Barclays. That's 10 years, I told Pooh in 95, I'll kill you if you try me for my Air Max 95s. Told Banks when I met him I'ma ride, and if I gotta die, I'd rather homicide. I ain't had 50 cent when my grandmama died. Now I'm going back to Cali with my Jacob on. See how time flies.
I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from the Bronx. By the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from. It's always good to keep in touch with who you really are. Whether blue or white collar, celebrity or star. I said what goes up comes down. Eventually you know the gravitation and pull is inevitable. By the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know where I came from. From the Bronx. By the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot. No matter where I go, I know.
If I got to choose a coast, I got to choose the east. I live out there, so don't go there. But that don't mean a nigga can't rest in the west. See some nice rest in the west. Smoke some nice cess in the west. Y'all niggas is a mess.
All right, y'all. So we back. Welcome to another BandClap TV rant video. I just had some things that I just wanted to talk about, and shout out to everybody who's been supporting me thus far. Shout out to everybody that's been helping me with your donations and also with your love and support. Also for liking and subscribing to my videos. I greatly appreciate that. And before I get started, I always have to let you all know that I do readings. I also do natal chart readings. I also do consultations, and I do on point Orisha Tarot readings for singles and for couples. And if you want to check out my many services that I offer, please go to www.bandclaptv.com, and when you scroll down, you will also see a link to go to my shadow work class, which is very, very, very important right now. Shadow work is extremely, extremely important. It's like 9 in the morning. I'm just now getting up, and it's to the point now where these dreams that I've been having have been just so crazy that it's like I can't even get to my laptop and pull my laptop out in time. It's just to the point where I'm just in my truck going to get food, and something just be like, yo, just take your phone out and just do this right quick. And since I know that I can edit this voice note in post, it makes me feel a lot better, because at least the quality isn't gonna dwindle just because I'm not doing it with my microphone set up and all of that stuff. So I want to tell y'all about a dream that I had just now, and it kind of disturbed me a little bit. Now, this dream, it has nothing to do, just like the dream that I was telling y'all on the last video about the world reset. This has nothing to do with my family for real. It's just a dream. It was very symbolic, and it has a lot to do with this new shift that's going on right now, because the thing about it is, I remember when I was a child, and I remember I used to tell this story a lot in a lot of my videos and stuff like that. When I was a child, I went through a lot of things as a child. A lot of my insecurities came from a lot of things that I couldn't control. Always had issues with my weight. I've always had issues with acne and other things that was just out of my control that I just couldn't fix until I got older. I would get in trouble a lot as a child, and it wasn't because I was just a bad child. I would get in trouble mainly because I always had my own mind. I always had my own mind. I always had my own way of doing things. I always used to speak out and stuff like that. And a lot of the shadow work that I had to do as an adult, it came from when I was a child. And you know, when you're in a indoctrinating school system and most of your teachers are women, because I know when I was in elementary school, all of my teachers were women. I didn't get a male teacher until middle school. And shout out to Mr. Green, because he was one of the realest middle school teachers that I've ever had. You know. So when you're in an environment where it's mostly ran by women and you're a boy that got all of this, you know, energy and all of this stuff, and you just want to play and you just want to speak out and find your own path and stuff like that, it was very, very hard for me. Very, very hard, because I was always smart as a child. I was always smart. But the main thing that I would get in trouble for was my conduct. And it wasn't because I was disruptive or anything like that. It was just, y'all remember when y'all was in school and you would get in trouble for talking in class or, you know, just being a boy. Me looking back at it now, it's just being a boy. I didn't want to just sit down and just be quiet all the time. You know, when I got finished with my work, I would make jokes and, you know, do the things that SU does. And I would get in trouble. And since I really didn't have much as a child, but the little things that I did have would get taken away from me every time I would speak out, every time I would talk, and it got to the point where I got more and more and more quiet, more and more and more reclusive, because I knew that if I spoke out or if I talked or whatever, I would end up getting in trouble, and that would lead to my dad coming up to the school and all of that stuff. Now, there's an upside to this. And the upside was, since my dad was very, very well known at the school, because he used to have to come up there all the time to chastise me. So, yes, I would get bullied, and yes, I would get checked. You know, it's a Memphis City school, so it's like, what do you expect? But one thing that I've never got in was a fight. I never had to fight at school. And the main reason why I never had to fight at school, because the students would never take it that far, because they knew about my dad. You know, a lot of people feared my dad. And they wasn't going to take that chance of them doing something to me and then my dad find out, because, you know, that's a whole nother ball game. And I remember a lot of times where I would get in trouble, and it would be because I was trying to defend myself, whether it was verbally or whatever. And those times my dad would come up to the school, you know, ask to talk to that person's parents, and there would be a whole situation in the principal's office, you know. So many times of that happening, you know, students really didn't want to mess with me like that because they feared my dad. But also, when it was my birthday, a lot of times, since my dad worked at the grocery store, he would sometimes throw me surprise birthday parties at the school. He would make sure that it was coordinated with what the teacher had going on. And I remember he would come in and he would have chips and pizza and drinks and a big old cake. And it'll be a whole birthday party at my school. And those are the memories that I hold dear to me, because those meant a lot. Those meant a lot. So when I think about my life as an adult, and I think about all the things that I went through in my life, and then I think about how I was raised and all the hardships that I would go through simply because I just wanted to be me. And me being me was not something that was conducive to society, and it wasn't conducive to how you're supposed to be as a man and all of that. I remember how my mom used to drill college and drill worrying about your future and all of those type of things. And then I think about how I tried to follow in those footsteps, but I knew inside college was never for me. I knew that. But just because I wanted to make my parents proud, because that's something that they envisioned for me to do, I got myself in a lot of debt, because I would go to these colleges, and because of one reason or another, I could never finish, because that just wasn't my path. I remember those times when I was a child and, you know, my mom and dad would find my rap books and they would whoop me and they would, you know, tear them up and all of that stuff. And I remember as a child yelling at the top of my lungs, I want to be a rapper, you know? And they hated that about me. And I remember those times where, I tried to do gospel rap, but it was just too corny for me. I just didn't like it. I even stopped rapping and I picked up a saxophone and I started playing the saxophone. Now, that saxophone was very, very important in my childhood because since I knew how to play the saxophone, I was able to go to an optional school. I was able to go to a performing arts high school that pretty much changed the trajectory of my life, because I know if I would have went to that Sheffield High School, that public school, I would have been a totally different guy. I mean, a totally different guy. And ain't no telling where my life would have been. So that saxophone was very, very important. And that's the one thing that I wouldn't take back. But just thinking about my life now and how every time that I would struggle and I had people around me who could help me, but I always had issues speaking out. And I always had issues asking for help and stuff like that. Because when I was a child, I would get in trouble for speaking out. And it took a lot of shadow work for me to work on that. It took a lot of shadow work, even when it just comes to approaching people, approaching women, even when it came to demanding the things that I know is for me. Because when I was a child and I would do that and the woman or the girl would lie on me or something like that, I knew I was going to get in trouble. And when I went home, I was going to have to deal with my dad. But on the flip side, the reason why my faith is so strong when it comes to my spirituality, the reason why I can live the way I live and know that I'll be provided for through my ancestors, through my Orishas, it's simply because when I was a child, I never had to fight. I never had to fight. And the reason why I never had to fight because of that fear of my dad. And that translated into my adulthood. The reason why I'm so hell-bent on that faith and laws of attraction and universal laws, while all the other people, they fight for what they want. They say if you want something, you got to go out there and get it. But when I was at home, every time that we would kind of go through a struggle or something like that, my dad would tell me to just pray about it. And God gonna make a way. God gonna take care of it. And then he would leave out and do whatever. And I would wake up the next day thinking the lights are supposed to be cut off. And the lights are still on. My dad come home with a trunk full of food, a car full of food, after he said that, he only got like $2 or $3 in his pocket. But he said that it was God that made a way. So as a kid, you're like, damn. So that means that when I'm going through a struggle or when I'm going through something, God gonna make a way for me, just like God made a way for my dad. I never seen my dad in a situation where he was just at rock bottom and he didn't know what to do. I never seen him in that situation. So even when I'm going through something and people would categorize it as rock bottom, I don't. Because since I don't know what rock bottom is, no matter how I'm struggling, I always feel like I can get myself out of it. Because I saw my dad and I saw my mom get out of it. My mom was always able to turn nothing into something. Whether it was food, it didn't matter what it was. So even though we struggled a lot as a child, there was never a time where I was just hungry. There was never a time where I didn't have nothing, like nothing. So that's why in my life now, even when it's just me and my truck and just my few little clothes and my few little stuff that I got, I still feel abundant because I don't know what it's like to have absolutely nothing. And that's the reason why when I did go to college and as an adult, when I experienced those things, it was a shock. But I didn't have the same response that a lot of other people would have. I never seen things like depression and suicide and all of that type of stuff as a child. Because it always seemed like the only time that my mom and dad would feel sad or mad or whatever was if I was doing something and I ended up getting wrote up at school, or it always had something to do with me. And you know, SU, Legua, loves their parents. So it gets to the point where you don't want to do certain things, and the reason why you don't want to do them is because you don't want your parents to be sad. You don't want to let your parents down. So certain things you will forego. But one thing I learned is that if you're a chosen one and you have a certain journey that you need to go on, then that thing, whatever that is, that you've been told that you shouldn't do and all of that stuff, if it's a part of your soul journey, every time you don't do that thing, that's what's going to drive you into your depression. That's what's going to drive you to being suicidal. Because that's your soul crying out, wanting to do what it came down here to do. But your parents don't know any better. You know, we're coming from the age of Pisces, which is the age of believing, and it's ruled by Neptune, which rules over your dreams and all of that stuff. And just like what Left Eye said in her song about waterfalls, she said dreams are hopeless aspirations in hopes of coming true. And as a child, that's how we used to think. We used to think that these dreams that we have and these imaginary friends that we have and all of these things are hopeless aspirations. It's not real. It's an illusion. So all of those spiritual gifts that we used to have as children, all of those spiritual gifts, they leave once you become an adult. Not because you no longer have the gift. It's because of the programming that you were programmed with. And the journey that it takes for you to even get a fraction of those things back in your adulthood, it's a long road. And the thing about it is, our parents don't know any of this stuff. Unless you came from a very, very spiritually aware type of background where you didn't have parents who raised you up in a religion, and you knew this type of stuff that I'm learning now as a child, then maybe you don't have this story. But for most black kids in this society, a lot of us, when we finally get on our journey as adults, one of the things that we start wondering and one of the things that we start wishing was that had we learned what we learned in a earlier age, would we been able to prevent a lot of things from happening? Now, two things that I can definitely thank my parents for is that my dad at an early age taught me about the red pill stuff that I'm learning about, or that I'm seeing in the manosphere, about the dangers of not getting with certain women. My dad always broke down the child support system and all the things that a woman can do as far as pinning babies on you and all of this stuff. And that's one thing that my dad really did teach me about. So as an adult, I'm single with no children. Even my mom, she used to drill in me the horrors of going to jail. She used to drill that in me really, really hard as a child. You know, you don't want to go to jail. If you do this and this and this and you end up in jail, don't call us because we can't afford to get you out. I know that was one thing that my mom used to drill in my head. So, knock on wood, I've never been to jail. And I've never wanted to do a crime that would get me sent to jail. Simply because of the horrible things that I seen in that movie Doing Hard Time. You know, I never wanted to experience that. But some of the struggles that I go through now, or the struggles that I went through as an adult, derive from a lot of the negative effects of those positive things. Meaning that it was hard for me to approach a woman. It was hard for me to look at a woman for who she is and to be able to have a relationship with a woman without thinking that she could do the same thing to me that my dad used to tell me about. Now, in this society, to your average red pill or manosphere guy, they would be like, yo, man, your dad taught you right. You should be happy that you had a father, one, and you should be happy that you had a dad that wasn't a simp, that actually gave you the game, you know? And to that person, I would say, yeah, that's true. That's very true. But I had a lot of regrets as well, because there was a lot of women that I wished that I could have went forward with a relationship with. There's a lot of women that I used to have crushes on and women that I used to like. And now, fast forward to now, they're married. Fast forward to now, they're in long-term marriages and they really, really did good for themselves. They were actually good girls. You know, they were actually good girls. And if I would have went with my own intuition when I was in school, I could have been with one of those good girls that was actually, you would call them unicorns now. And they were actually really good girls. They wouldn't have done the things that my dad warned me about simply because they was raised up the right kind of way too. So they graduated high school, they got their degree and all that stuff, and while they were in college, they met their husband, and they're still married to this day. And I missed out on those. Even when it came to what my mom was saying about jail and stuff like that. There's a lot of things, and this is the reason why it took me a while to say certain things, and I try to stray away from certain things. And even now, before I got in touch with my spirit team and my spirit guides and all of that, I used to struggle doing and saying stuff that I'm saying now because of all of the people and all the freedom fighters who said these same type of things before me, and how they got put in jail and how they got mysteriously killed and mysteriously shot and all of those type of things. So if you grow up and you're fearing jail, so you try to do things how society says that you're supposed to do them, but your spiritual path is to be a divine messenger, then the times where I don't speak out, the times where I just let things slide simply because I don't want to end up in a situation that's going to land me in jail. Now I'm going against why I even came on this earth. And you see how much of an issue that would be, because if you're meant to speak out on something, it's nothing that this system of soulless beings can do to you if you're protected. And that's one thing that I had to learn as an adult. Even if it was a situation to where you had to do some time for something that you said or something that you did, if you're doing time for standing up for what you believe in, if you're doing time because you spoke out against injustice and stuff like that, if you're doing time simply because you didn't just sit back and let something happen to your brother or your sister or whatever, then even in that jail, you will be protected spiritually. And that's something that I just wholeheartedly believe in, especially now. So with all of that being said, I want to go into this dream that I had, because the main reason why I'm saying all of this stuff that I'm saying is because, like I said in my last video, there's a shift that's going on right now. And with this shift that's going on, a lot of the things that we used to could hang our hat on and we used to could hold these things dearly, now in this new system, those things are no longer going to work anymore. Those things are no longer going to be the standard anymore, which means that now we're going to have to figure out new ways to deal with certain things that we used to just throw it under the bus and just throw it under the rug. And for an example, how many of y'all, it was something that you wanted to do, or it was something that you was curious about doing and your parents told you no. And for that person that wasn't scared of what their parents would do to them, you would say why, and they would just say because I said so. And when they said that, it just made you just cower down and not do it or whatever. This is one of the things that I'm talking about, because with these children that's being born now in this world that we're in now, they're not going to go for that. And you're going to start to, as a parent, you're going to start to get a lot of pushback, a lot of rebellion. And you got to think about how you were when you were their age. If you had that same type of confidence and you had that same type of passion in your heart and in your spirit as a child, when your parents told you because they said so, would you have done the same thing that they would have done if you were in their position? This and a lot of other things that we're just used to doing simply because our parents did it to us and their parents did it to them. A lot of these things in this new world, in this new shift that we're going into right now, a lot of these things are going to have to be carefully examined, edited, or just done away with in general. One of the other things, corporal punishment. They've already taken it out to schools and all that type of stuff. We live in a social media type of age to where every child has a cell phone. A lot of these children, they know more about the internet and they know about technology and stuff like that more than their parents even know. But now we live in a type of society to where we know about technology and we know about cell phones and all of that. And now we're underestimating what our kids know. We're underestimating what that child is learning when he or she is at school around other children who may not be raised by two parents, who may have a lot more freedoms and might have experienced a lot more type of things around in their house than your child did. So they're talking about all the websites that they found out about and all of that type of stuff. And your child may not even come home and tell you all of this stuff. They may be sneaking around doing stuff and you don't even know about it. So I brought up corporal punishment because this is the one thing that a lot of people used to, especially black people, they used to hang their hat on corporal punishment. And when somebody would confront them about it, the main excuse that they would say is, well, my mama and my daddy did it to me, and they mama and they daddy did it to us, and we came out good. I mean, did you really come out good? Did you come out doing what your soul journey was? Did you come out on your spiritual journey, on your stages of enlightenment, getting to know your inner child, doing that shadow work? And are you living spiritually the way that your soul intended for you to live? Or are you in this system working a regular job, miserable, depressed, all of those type of things? And then when you see your child and your child got that spark that you used to have, and you calling yourself trying to protect that child, but all you're doing is trying to make that child another version of you, of how you ended up. And like I said, these children know how to call the police now. These children know how to call protective services and all of these things to tell on you. And another thing, when it comes to psychologically, men and women, they handle things like pain and stuff like that differently. They handle things like that differently. And when I was a child growing up, and I could only just speak on my parents and the people that I knew and stuff like that. But even though our parents were still asleep spiritually and stuff like that because they was in religion, when we would get whoopings and stuff like that as children, that's just what they were. They was just spankings, you know. There were no whelps and marks and bruises and stuff like that, at least with me, on our bodies when they were done. And after it, they would always say, I'm doing this because I love you. You know, every black parent I know or every black child I know you've heard it hurts me more than it hurts you, all of that stuff. But imagine these parents now. A lot of them are psychologically scarred. A lot of them are mentally scarred. A lot of them have a lot of issues, and they're not even supposed to be having kids. But due to the way that they were raised or whatever, or lack thereof, they end up having kids, and they haven't done that shadow work, and they haven't got to know their inner child, so they don't know how to communicate in a way that their child can understand. So they end up trying to do the same things that they saw or they witnessed from their own parents, but they go overboard. They end up killing their children, or they end up severely, mentally, psychologically hurting that child. So when that little girl grows up, she's more likely to be in a abusive relationship with her man, or she might even be a type of girl that the only way that she can get off sexually is if it's extremely, extremely rough. Almost like the R word, because I don't want to say it, but almost like the R word, simply because she got beat and she got whipped so much as a child that psychologically, when she grew up, it got to the point where she started to like it. I know it seems weird, but behind closed doors, if you're a type of person that gives readings and stuff like that behind closed doors, you hear some crazy stuff. And the thing about it is like, you can't judge, because you don't know how people deal with pain. You don't know, because not everybody deals with pain the same type of way. Not everybody shows it on the outside that they're dealing with something that's very, very painful, that's very, very scarring, and all of that type of stuff. Even when it comes to the guys and stuff like that, even when it comes to the boys. Because I remember a lot of times, and I would say when I was in 6th grade, and I always told this story about how I did this rap battle with this girl in the 6th grade, and she was losing the battle. And I ended up writing, because we was writing notes back and forth to each other, and I wrote her a note because she wrote me a note first. And she was battling with me, I was battling with her. And the teacher ended up taking the note, and then her friend spent it and was like, yeah, you know, he said this to her. And I ended up getting in trouble, and it was almost sexual harassment. And I remember when my dad was trying to whoop me, I was trying to tell him, like, yo, like, you know, it's not what you think. It's not what you think. I'm innocent. But since I've already had a track record of getting rolled up for speaking out, talking in class, all of that type of stuff, my dad didn't believe me, you know? And it was that point in the 6th grade where I stopped crying when I would get a whooping. It got to the point where I was almost welcoming it, you know? Because it's like, yo, like, why am I crying because I'm being whooped for something that I didn't do? Or not something that I didn't do, for something that I was framed and stuff like that. So imagine if I grew up and I would do different things and stuff like that. And since I'm just used to taking pain for stuff that I was innocent about, what if psychologically I just went around and, you know, did stuff that I actually was guilty of? And when it came to the pain, as far as me being in fights or the pain of police brutality and all of that stuff, it doesn't bother me. I can take it because I remember when I was a child. Now that's a super, super hypothetical situation. But I mean, just think about it. This is just to provoke thought. Just think about it, you know, because all of these things have a cause and effect to them. And as a parent, this is something that you really, really have to look at when you're raising a child. Also, another thing, when you're a parent, remember all the things that you did, because remember what Nas said in that song about Daughters. I think it was called Daughters or something like that, where he said he said something about the players are the foulest heartbreakers in the world. They get you back by having precious little girls. Remember that line? So don't think, to all of my dudes out there that's smashing all these type of women and running trains on them, gang banging, you know, all of this type of stuff. Don't think that just because you think that you turned a new leaf as a father or as a mother, don't think that all of those things isn't going to come back to bite you karmically in your child. And that's another thing. Because a lot of times, a lot of these parents are disowning their child, and a lot of these parents are almost killing their child, all of this stuff, because their child is so much of a splitting image of them that they don't like it. That man was doing all of those crazy things to women when he was younger. And now he's ashamed because now his daughter is 14 years old with a child. Now she's ashamed because her son is doing things to women or stuff like that she used to do with men or whatever it is. Make sure as a parent that you've done that healing within yourself, so that when you see your child going through the same mistakes, because a lot of times that's karma showing you like, look, you thought that you got away with this, but now in order for you to show that you fully healed from this, I'm going to put your child through the same situation. And since you're the expert on it, now you're going to have to be able to have that conversation with your child to let them know, like, yo, don't make the same mistake I did because this happened to me. And you're going to have to tell your child a similar situation that you used to do. That thing that you tried to bury for all of these years. That thing that you tried to act like it didn't happen. That thing that you thought that you could just sweep under the rug because nobody would find out. That thing. And y'all know what I'm talking about. For everybody, that thing is a different type of thing for everybody. So I've been talking all this time and I didn't even tell y'all my dream. So in my dream, it was me and it was my little brother. And this was weird. But my little brother in the dream, he had this obsession with glue. Like the Elmer's glue that we used to have at school. And I think I came home to visit, but in this dream my little brother was a whole lot smaller. He was probably like 10 or 11 years old or something like that, or maybe younger, maybe about 8 or 9. And he would just run around the house just putting glue everywhere that he could put it. And I remember I got so mad because I think he put glue all over my stuff or whatever. And I got so mad. I was like, what's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? And I remember my dad, he came out the room and he was fuming. He was furious. He was like, don't ever tell your brother those things. I don't never want to hear you say that again, and all of that stuff. Now, in the dream, I was like, you know, why? Because every time I did something as a child that was unconventional, that was weird or whatever, you would tell me that I lost my mind. And you would tell me that, you know, all those type of things. And it was like, when I told him that, he started tearing up because it was nothing that he could say, because he actually used to do that, you know, in the dream. And I told him, I'm like, look, you know, no matter what, I always love my brother. I'm never going to do anything to hurt him. I'm never going to do anything to go against him or anything like that. But when it comes to dealing with certain things, you can't expect me to do more than what I was raised to do. I remember a lot of times when, you know, you and mom would have disagreements and stuff like that. And I've never seen you hit my mom, you know, never abusive. But when it came to your words, my dad, he could say some stuff that could gut punch you with words. You know, he didn't have to hit you. He didn't have to do anything physical to you. But them words, man, He knew how to formulate a sentence to where it's like a gut punch and it'll knock the wind out of you, you know? So you can't expect me to do nothing more than what you taught me how to do, than what you raised me how to be, you know? And I remember in that dream, I just had a really, really heartfelt sit down with my dad, you know, just telling him those things. And I remember that, you know, at the end of the dream, you know, I told Randy, you know, my little brother, that I love him. And it was a really, really, it was an eye-opening dream for me. And the reason why I'm sharing this particular dream, because I know a lot of you all out there been through certain things, and the reason why you deal with certain things that you deal with is because either you saw your parents deal with them in that particular way, or it might was a lack thereof. So you don't know how to deal with things a certain way because you've never seen your parents deal with these things. And the main message that I would like to tell you all is never too late. It's never too late to do that shadow work. It's never too late to admit when you were wrong. It's never too late to have that talk. You're never too old to do these things, because as long as you keep these things on the inside, and as long as you keep those feelings and emotions and stuff like that bottled up, and you think that it's for your own good, or you think it's for their own good, the higher of a chance that your child, or the higher of a chance that you may even end up doing something to somebody that's irreversible. Because it was one thing that I think it was Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews. He was talking about, where he was saying that a lot of parents, they don't give their children enough credit to what they can pick up when it comes to the parents and stuff like that. That's the reason why, if you're a parent and you're going through things with your significant other, and we've been raised in this culture where, for better or for worse, we got to stay in it for the kids and stuff like that. As children, they can feel those things. They can feel the animosity. They can feel the body language and the spiritual language that you have towards that person. Even if you're smiling in their face, they can feel it. And if that child ends up speaking out about it, and you get in your feelings, and you end up whooping that child or something like that, then that's going to affect that child when that child gets older, and it's time for them to go on their journey. Because I know that this may not be true, but I always felt that if, as a parent, since you didn't do your healing and you didn't do your shadow work, if you end up programming something in that child to where they aren't able to complete their spiritual mission, I feel like some of that blame has to go on you. I know that's not, you know, true or anything like that, but you know, in a way, I always kind of felt like that, even though that may not be fair, because the parent may be spiritually asleep and they don't know that the child that they're raising is a chosen one. Your parent may not know, but at the end of the day, you know, as a person, we all have some bit of healing, some bit of shadow work. Being a black person in America, being a melanated being, being a chosen one, somebody who was born with their soul intact. And, you know, we all have that healing work that we have to do. We all have that healing shadow work that we have to do. There's not a person that's void of that. There's not a person who's had a life that was just so perfect that you don't need healing, that you don't need any shadow work. Not one person, especially in this Americanized system that we're in. It's not like back in the olden days where you had that elder that as a parent, you would get that child to that elder, and that elder could look at that child and spiritually tell you, oh, this child right here is a child of Oshun. This child is a child of Ogun. this child is a child of Shango. So this child is meant to do this and is meant to do this. And they were accurate. And so since this child is a child of Oshun, so she's meant to do this. That means that this is where y'all are going to have to move to, so that she'll be able to get the energy that she needs to complete her path. Since your son is a child of Shango, this is where he needs to go so he can learn more about the energy and the passion and the rebellious nature, that he's going to have to learn how to control that, because he's meant to be a king. He's meant to be a warrior. He's meant to be a general or whatever. And we don't have that anymore. So with that being said, we really don't know, until we do that shadow work, we really don't know what we're supposed to be doing. We're just doing what this system has told us that we're supposed to do. And a lot of us, we're living vicariously what our parents have programmed into us that we're supposed to be, and how we're supposed to live, and all of that stuff. And you wonder why, in this time that we're in now, where there's a shift, you wonder why you feel so depressed. You wonder why you can't sleep at night, why you're having nightmares, or why you're having all of these issues. And then this system tells you, oh, you know, take these drugs, smoke this weed, take these pills, sniff this coke, all these type of things, when you really don't need to do any of that stuff. All you got to do is go within and see what your spirit team is trying to relay to you. And then once you get that message, everything goes back to normal. But no, a lot of us, since we're psychologically and spiritually asleep, we do these outward things and we mess up our bodies. So when you finally get in your older age and you get this knowledge and you finally decide that you want to go on that journey, then, you know, now there's a lot of more stuff that you're going to have to do before you can even get to your spiritual journey, you know? So I know this was just a super rant video. I don't even know if I'm making sense right now. I'm just getting my thoughts out. But that's just something to think about. You know, nobody is so high and mighty that you don't have to do any shadow work, that you don't have to do any healing, because none of us are perfect. And if you heed that message and you start on that journey, and you start to see how important you really are to the soul family, you start to see how much you really matter. Because that's the thing. And I remember saying this, I think it was the Metaphysics of Suicide. A lot of people, you know, leave this earth because they feel like they don't matter. A lot of people are depressed because they feel like that they're alone, because they decide that they want to do what isn't normal. They want to be what isn't normal. So you have a lot of people who feel lonely. You have a lot of people who feel down and out, and they feel like that they don't got nobody to talk to. They feel like nobody understands them, you know? And it's crazy because when you look at these superhero movies and when you look at the villain, it seems like that's always the story for the villain. They wasn't normal. They were teased a lot. Nobody understood them. Everybody disowned them and all of that stuff. So instead of doing that healing work and stuff like that, they decide to be a villain. They decide to be a villain. And that's not something that you have to be, because villains hurt innocent people. Villains hurt innocent people. So just think about that. And when you do, you'll be glad that you did. I appreciate everybody for checking out this video. I know it isn't much. It's just my thoughts and, you know, just my thoughts and my feelings about this particular subject. And if you want to weigh in on this, definitely hit me up in the comments. Leave me a comment. Let me know. And like I always say, if you want to be able to check out these videos before they're released on YouTube, please join my Patreon at www.patreon.com/BandClapTV. So, like I always say, man, I got a lot of things that's coming up. I'm just moving and grooving right now, just trying to keep some content up for y'all. And until next time, BandClap TV, we out. And no matter what, you always got to stay shining. You always got to be shining. You know what I mean? Because there's a whole lot of bullshit going on, man. Just don't worry about it.